Explaining the Boxer Rebellion. In the late 19th century, foreign nations were encroaching on China's land during its century of humiliation. Russia, Japan, Britain, France, Germany were all countries that had set up their own enclaves and spheres of influence within China. However, the Chinese did not welcome the foreigners' modernization and religions that they brought along with them. So, in response, in 1898, men from Shandong would form the Righteous and Harmonious Society. They claimed that spirits possessing them made them invincible, and would impress locals by showing off their martial arts skills. These performances of martial arts would give them the title of Boxers. From between 100,000 and 300,000, mostly young and unemployed men, would join during the Boxer Rebellions. Violence would erupt in the late 1890s when the Boxers would begin to attack churches and missionaries. Shortly after, a small group of Boxers would clash with the Qing dynasty forces, the current ruling dynasty inside of China. However, after the battle had ended, the Boxers would begin to support the Qing dynasty, hence their slogan, "Support the Qing government, destroy the invaders." In 1898, Empress Dowager Cixi would take power in China. In 1900, she would pass edicts defending the Boxers, hoping that they would help her rid China of the invaders. The ever-growing Boxers would then move from Shandong to Beijing. In May of 1900, European diplomats would call for help in defending the foreign quarters of the city. However, only 400 naval troops from 8 separate nations were able to make it to Beijing. Those foreign nations would happen to be Britain, the United States, Japan, Russia, Germany, Austria, France, and Italy. As small-scale fighting broke out between the foreign troops and the Boxers in Beijing, more reinforcements were called. 2,000 troops from the same 8 nations would arrive and land in Tianjin. These troops would then attempt to make their way to Beijing. However, they had landed without permission, and the Qing dynasty would see this as an invasion. The Chinese government would finally align with the Boxers in an attempt to drive the foreigners out. The new alliance between the Qing dynasty and the Boxers would be able to defeat the foreign troops and force them to retreat. In Beijing, the siege of the legation quarters had begun. The legation quarters was located right next to the Forbidden City where Empress Dowager lived. Inside, only around 400 troops protected 400 civilians and 3,000 Chinese Christians. Although the Qing dynasty had tens of thousands of troops at their disposal, they first attempted to burn out the defenders. Then their small assaults would be fended off. Up north, 100,000 Russian troops moved into Manchuria. They would crush Boxer forces which had been slowing the construction of a Russian railway line in the region, and in a few months would completely take over the region. In Tianjin, 50,000 troops from all 8 nations had been building their numbers for quite a while. On July 14th, they planned to march over to Beijing to relieve the people who were being besieged at the legation quarters. The forces would eventually make it to Beijing and defeat the Chinese force in the city, ending the 55-day-long siege. After this, the fighting would cease, but there would still continue to be multiple atrocities committed after the war. Looting, rape, and killings were quite common, and the Empress Dowager had already fled the city. There was truly no reason to continue the war. A peace treaty would be signed, making it so that China had to pay war reparations and give the foreigners more territory within China. In conclusion, the Boxer Rebellion was a bloody war between colonialists and a failing dynasty, in which the colonialists had attempted to gain land in this failing dynasty and had succeeded, only weakening the Qing dynasty even more, which would eventually lead to its downfall not too many years after. The Russian occupation of Manchuria would also lead to the Russo-Japanese War just a few years later. Thank you for watching this video on the Boxer Rebellion.